The topic today began when I crossed the street on a work break to go to Walgreens, which is my nearest grocery store, and find something to eat. And this word in red leapt out at me as I walked in the store and walked by the counter: burnout. And I stopped in my tracks and blinked and looked, because it really might as well have been scribed in neon across the field of my vision. And I think Psychology Today put out a special edition issue on burnout. And so they put the word burnout in great big letters. But as we just chanted with our Dharma, our Dharma talk verse, the Dharma that I receive and maintain, it's not necessarily exactly what Psychology Today meant, but I sure received and maintained it. My topic this week was to be burnout. It could be nothing else, and that I needed to look at that in myself. So I have been noodling around about burnout all week and have come to the conclusion that today's talk is going to be more like a walk in my garden. Okay, you're going to see some little tiny plants that have just barely been transplanted and are holding on for dear life. You might see some more mature offerings in the Dharma garden that I'm sharing with you today. And the point is going to be up to you to find. And I do think that's what our chant means when we say we receive and maintain it. Yeah, I'm doing my thing, and what you all receive and maintain, I trust you to find and create. Actually, it's to create value in these words, which is not to let me off the hook for doing the best job I can. So burnout has often been approached from the individual point of view. I am a person that I burned out. I experienced burnout. I'm a person that had burnout. I'm a person who went through burnout, person trying to recover from burnout, with the emphasis on the individual, on me. And that framing was a skillful means for as long as it worked. And then it became inadequate to my own experience of healing burnout and seeking healing for it. I now understand burnout is something that happens in the context of sangha, of community. And sangha, as beautifully defined by our first three precepts, is when we gather to practice with others. Okay, so our sangha is whatever community of practice. And what is practice? It's whatever we're doing right now. We may be practicing our Zen practice, our Buddhist practice. We may be practicing some other kinds of practices. We may be practicing being completely unconscious and just sort of rolling along, not knowing what's going on. All right, whatever we're practicing, that's what we're practicing. And we are constantly in community in doing that. One of the big ignorances, blind spots of our particular culture right now is the extent to which we are always inevitably in community, interacting with that community, participating in that community, being affected by that community. I do think it's a particular cultural blind spot of us right here, right now, because when I look at our traditional teachings, I don't see that blind spot there. In fact, I see a whole lot about sangha, about community, the way that pain and suffering is described. It's often described where sangha is such a key component of it, you can't even talk about an individual's personal suffering. It just doesn't make sense. For example, the 8 worldly winds. They are praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, success and failure. And all of them, when you look into them deeply, seem to involve other people and our relationships with other people. So that was my first clue in looking at burnout. Maybe the reason I found it so hard to heal is that it's actually some sort of grinding misfit between how I'm moving on my side of things and the community of practices surrounds me, wherever that is. That could be, instead of looking at it as me functioning uh, uh, poorly or struggling or collapsing within a situation of adversity, I could say, what are all these people doing together and how is it affecting everybody present? And that was a really skillful move for me to make in working with burnout, because it helped me get a bigger picture. It helped me drop off a preoccupation with uh, praising or blaming myself in this situation. Uh, it helped me let go of fault finding in myself or in that community of practice, whatever it was, and just be able to letting go all of these attachments to how things ought to have been, and then my own pain generated understanding, mental formations about how I thought they were. I could let go all of that and just see, how is this working? How is this working today? How am I interacting with these people right now? And what am I receiving from them? And in leaning into and tuning into the moment, that moment, which always inevitably has other people in it, whether or not they're literally in the room. Nobody's literally in the room with me. Y'all are here with me. Leaning into the moment is where I began to find my answers about how to heal, how I was working with others, how I was participating, how I was showing up, that was creating the intense distress and even, yes, damage of burnout. Whew. Another thing I noticed is my lifelong patterns are quite deceitful, and I was trained, I was conditioned to lie, and I do a pretty strong earworm practice, meaning if a song comes to me in odd moments, or especially when I'm dreaming, when I'm half awake, I go and Google the lyrics and find out what the Dharma of that song is, what some part of my mind is trying to give me a message. And I understand very little, actually, but what I do understand about dreaming is that in dreams, we're not so good at talking. We might get a word or a phrase through, but we're not going to get a paragraph of text. We usually can't read very well in dreams. And if you've ever had a book or a letter show up in a dream and you've struggled to read it and not been able to, it's because the part of our brain that would read that text is asleep. And yet, we want very much to understand the message. And so that our mind tries to tell us, hey, pay attention. There's something here that you need to become aware of. And if you've trained with Al Long, you know that whenever that word aware is thrown down in the middle of the sangha, you need to sit up and pay attention, right? Awake, aware, this is it. This is why we're here. So in dreams, our mind, because that part of us is sleeping, can't use text very well to tell us what it is we need to know. We can't get the news that way. Earworms are a workaround. Our minds can shoot us a fragment of a melody, which we can often powerfully retain into our waking moments. And that melody often has lyrics attached, which then consciously, when we're awake, we can go Google those lyrics and find out what is the message that we need to hear. And so I have been just tormented for 3 days now by a song by Joseph, former Cat Stevens, Can't Keep It In. And I'll read you the bit that matters. I'll read you 2 bits. Okay, the first is the opening verse, and y'all are gonna have this earworm too, although I won't sing it. Oh, I can't keep it in. I can't keep it in. I gotta let it out. I gotta show the world. World's gotta see all the love that's in me. Okay. And I don't know, if you don't know that song, I don't even know what to tell you. Go Google it after I'm done talking, maybe. But that's not the part that the earworm was trying to get me to communicate. It's later when he doubles down and he's just thundering. He says, so why can't you say, if you know, then why can't you say? You've got too much deceit, and deceit kills the light. Light has to shine. I said, shine light, shine light. All right. So, oh, deceit, ignorance. And then I thought about trauma and how trauma can be understood as a pain, an injury that we're not able to process, to grieve, to feel at the time that it occurs. And so ignorance protects us from that injury until later, however much later, it doesn't function so well anymore, or the cost of that protection becomes too high. And we begin to painstakingly, hopefully with loving support, dismantle that wall of ignorance and see what's really going on. And from there, the healing begins. And I can make it sound like this is a really intentional, even a headsy process. And of course, it can be approached in that way. I think we have to heal as the people we are. And if we are headsy, then we may need to go into our healing head first. But it's really about, as I'm coming to understand it, gentle, awake awareness to whatever it is we experienced at that time and in the present moment. I've been looking at the Arrow Sutra with my sangha here in Louisville, and that's a teaching that when an unawake, unaware person is injured, is struck by an arrow, because they are unawake and unaware to what's happened to them, they start to react in ways that in fact generate more suffering. Okay, that's a pretty accessible teaching. It's an easy one to get. It's as if we are then struck by a second arrow. And oftentimes it's not just one second arrow, it's 99 more arrows. We may awake to our own pain, realizing we are standing in a hailstorm of arrows, uncountable arrows aimed at ourselves. And it's a very uncomfortable place to wake up to the moment. And yet, the wonderful thing about waking it up to our second arrows, our third arrows, all the things we say to ourselves about that first injury that in fact perpetuate our suffering, we can actually do something about those. So it's a really, really exciting moment when we understand, okay, I was just hurt. Somebody hurt my feelings. And I reacted unskillfully by making up a case about how that person is just horrible, and making up a case that how I didn't deserve that, and then the suffering is just accumulating. And later in the sutra, it talks about obsession and ignorance obsession. It's a clunky translation. We're working on finding our own words, but basically we become obsessed with our own second arrows, and our second arrows are a form of weaponized ignorance against ourself. And the way to stop generating them is in the moment to locate that first arrow pain, that injury, that hurt. And as we are able to be with it, it's kind of that simple. It's gentle, awake awareness where we're like, ow. And if the ow is huge, like the collapse of a major relationship, or the loss of a loved one, or the failure of a project that we put years into, or something like that, we may have many rounds of this coming into contact with our first arrow, ouch. It may come up a number of times, and we'll be in a moment of ouch. And these first arrow ouch moments, if it's really a big enough deal that I've got to practice with it intentionally, they are overwhelming. they obliterate me, they wipe me out. And it reminds me of what's becoming one of my favorite koans about when it's hot, let the heat kill you. When it's cold, let the cold kill you. That ouch just, it just wipes me out. And then wiped out, consciousness reconstitutes, a selfing occurs, I find a new me, um, uh, like the phoenix risen from the ashes of the heat that just killed me. And I'm able to re-engage with the moment and move forward again. Um, that's what first arrow work feels like for me. But let me say that sometimes I can barely bear an instant of contact with that first arrow pain. And then my mind spins off into second arrows. And then I'm gently awake and aware, there's the second arrows, there's the 99th arrows. You just, gentle awareness too. There. It's general awareness all the way through that is the magic here. So you don't have to retain anything from this talk about how to work with your own suffering other than gentle, awake awareness in the moment. That's kind of it. So there's a tendency on the part of practitioners as they develop sensitivity to what is a second arrow, what is a third arrow, what is a 10th arrow, to be like, oh, I spot it and I can control it. I can stop it. And of course, that is a mind object, which then can comprise yet another arrow, right? Because what happens when our minds just continue to generate arrows, and then we hit ourselves with the arrow of, I should have been able to stop that. I knew this was a second arrow, third arrow, 10th arrow situation. Because of that, I advise, if you want it, if you want advice, that you simply treat your second, third, 10th arrows as any other kind of mind object. Just let it flow. Watch it flow. Watch the progression of arguments you make against yourself, against someone else, against a situation. They have the purpose of somehow, here's another big word, bypassing that original first arrow injury and harm. And it may be a bypass we actually very much need in the moment. It may be that we need to bow to our second, ninth, and 200th arrows for keeping us going until we were ready and able to come into contact with that original injury. Regardless, you don't have to do anything about your second arrow experiences other than gentle, awake awareness. Just kind of watch them happen. Just watch it happen. It will come to an end and you'll move on. And you'll move on with a new understanding of how it is that you create suffering for yourself, for others within sangha, by generating these mind objects of blame, of criticism, of fault finding, of storying that really don't help. And awareness it's really valuable. The challenge with awareness, again, in our culture, is that we think that when we become aware of something, we're supposed to immediately utilize and weaponize that awareness against the source of whatever the wrongdoing is. So that's ourselves, right? So as we understand how we're second arrowing ourselves, we're supposed to take up that knowledge and make ourselves stop. No. Just more gentle awareness. So how does this all, I'm going to circle back to burnout because it does relate. When I said I was trained to lie, and I quoted Cat Stevens, you've got too much deceit and deceit kills the light. I find in this area of sangha how we participate and co-create community, where a lot of us we're socialized, we're conditioned to conceal. And of course, to be good at concealing, we have to first lie to ourselves. In order to really sell it, we've got to be convinced of it. No, I'm fine. No, that was okay. Yeah, the person said that thing, but it didn't really bother me. Yes, I mean, it would be nice if people could help me with this task, but I don't really need it. I'm throwing some of my own second through 10th arrows at you, ones that pop up for me often. Yeah, it doesn't really matter if people care about what I'm teaching. or if they understand what I'm saying right now. That's a really ridiculous second arrow. That's pure deceit. I mean, hello, it matters a lot. It matters a lot. Uh, for starters, if I'm not offering something that you all can take, receive, and maintain as a Dharma, I'm really not doing my job and I need to do it different, right? So I'm going to lean into this moment of vulnerability and I'm going to not lie about it. Yeah. And does that mean I need to center it in our conversation? Oh no, I've probably already said more than enough about it. But neither am I going to try to hide it. I'm not going to try to be stoic mountain Zen dude who practices to become untouched by arrows. Yeah, I'm going to move in the other direction. Let me look at our time. I have a feeling that some of y'all might relate to some of the plants in my garden that I've wandered through talking about today. So I do want to leave plenty of time to discuss. As I said, that training to lie is it's important to take up that self-awareness in a gentle, awake, aware way. When I see myself moving towards armoring, towards concealment of my own vulnerability, not to double down on faulting myself for that, right? Because that's just another arrow. I'm just gonna put myself in more pain if I do that. Instead, I'm just gently awake and aware. Wow, I feel myself wanting to head for cover right now. Is that the best thing to do in this moment of sangha, right here, right now, which is the moment we all have? So I invite you all to take up anything that was interesting or useful for you. Unmute yourselves and share about it. And I thank you so much.